Here we are between two different swales. They were implemented at different times, over a year apart. Different sections were done at different times. If you can tell from here, this upper swale is much longer than the lower swale. It serves the same purpose, though we had more room once we started. And the reason that we had limited room for either one is because they have to be level. They have to be on contour the entire way, otherwise by definition they are not swales, and by function they won't work the way that we'd like them to. The whole idea with swales and with plenty of other design methods in permaculture is to slow water down in a system and sink that water into the ground. Especially for places like California, this is imperative because for 8, sometimes 9+ months out of the year, there's hardly any precipitation, so we have to save what we can get. Here in North Atlanta, Georgia, it is a bit easier to manage the water that comes because it comes throughout the year, though we do have some larger rain events that require some extra planning. But here is where we started. So when we were first designing, we looked at where the water likes to collect, and if you can't tell from this angle, and you probably cannot, this right here where the swale starts is the low point of the driveway. So everything on the left side of the driveway and a lot of what is coming from the right side of this angle of the driveway is coming down to this point, and it used to pool here, so this is where we started. Literally the first shovel went in right here because we knew that that's where we needed to, or for one, we needed to start the swale there to collect as much water as possible, and if nothing else, we wanted to relieve the water that was pooling here in the driveway. And then the next step was to, after starting to dig, was to figure out how far the swale would actually go. And we took a laser level, and you can see the house, the front door of the house down there, the protective coverings on the trees in line with this point. It's hard to see from this angle, but this is well over 100 feet. This is something like 150, 170 maybe. It's rather long, especially for a suburban property. But we used as much space as we could, and started from here, the low point, and as it turns out, now we can see the result after years of observation, and the swale is mostly level. And to go over how a swale is made, there are different methods, in case you don't already know. It is essentially a ditch on contour. The key is that all the material that's taken out of the ditch is rolled and placed onto the lower side of the contour line, and eventually, if sooner, hopefully, rather than later, we can plant it. This is Georgia, so seeing as how there's Georgia clay just below the surface of most of the areas around here, it was nearly impossible to grow anything from the start with the material that was coming out of the swales. So over time we mulched and composted and covered and worked the clay, not literally tilling it, but worked in materials that we would like to see in there, and ended up turning it into plantable soil. And in the first section, just on the other side of this bridge, this is the pilot section that we did first. We have some older trees in there, about, I think they were rootstock 2 years old when we got them, and there's some newer ones just below that, and a few more over here. We started with those, and they were planted pretty close together, and at first they didn't take off, and now those trees, as well as the fig trees that you may have seen over at the other end, are doing very well compared to the first couple years of growth. And we imagine that's from the building of the soil, which is probably our second priority here. So to build the soil, we need the right materials, and given the right time and input, along with water being slowed down in the system and absorbed into the ground, we can create some better building, soil building material, and eventually plant in it. One of the downsides is that in the summer, when this is flourishing, there are a lot of critters that are attracted, including deer, which is why we have the coverings on the trees, because if we don't have those, then the deer will rub them to death. And for the other smaller critters, we do our best to have deterrence. There's no animal like a dog to keep them away, and it's not, the critters aren't terrible, but they do like to get at things, so we do our best to cover what's important and put out deterrence. Some ideas that we've had, aside from animals, would be lavender for deer, spicy ground powders for smaller animals that like get up close and personal with some of the different shrubs, but it's hard to identify which ones exactly are the problems, and also there's enough open space that we can't protect everything out here. So when things are growing, we do our best to try to prevent them from coming in with things like that, or deter them once they've found it. And this is the middle between the two swales. The pond here was something that was implemented a little later on, because we realized that we could catch some more water, and the pond from this angle is hardly visible. It's not, especially when there are leaves and vegetation thriving, it's not visible from the road. So that was why this spot was chosen, and it's between the two swales, so it acts as an additional overflow